Hello all, as you saw in the title, today we're doing something a little bit different. Not picking, but instead a cutaway tutorial. Of course, cutaways are a very useful tool when you're starting out. Being able to see what you're doing is certainly helpful, and you can make one yourself in about an hour or so, which certainly beats spending $20 to $30 for one at a company. So we're going to get started with the stuff you're going to need. And the stuff you're gonna need is a lock, of course. Preferably you want a key and knob because that requires the least amount of cutting. You want files. The two I use mostly are the half round and the, well, full round, whatever you call this. And you want to make sure this one is decently small. You're also gonna want a hacksaw, a vise, and then some gutting equipment. And stuff that will make your life easier is gloves, because you're going to be handling a hacksaw and you don't want to cut yourself because that would be bad. If possible, you want to work outdoors because this brass dust is messy and annoying to deal with. You don't want to have to deal with that. If you can, have a key for your lock and makes stuff easier. Some picks is also nice, but I'm sure you have that covered. Some sandpaper. All you really need is just like a single sheet of 800 grit or so. And then if you can, some grubbing equipment. And again, that just makes everything faster and easier. And I'll leave links to the equipment you're going to need for grubbing in the description. So that's the equipment. Now we can get started. So first you're going to want to gut your lock, and then you want to pin up the last pin chamber. And, well, that can depend on your key. Here we're using the red key from the Sparrows thingamabob, so pinned up in chamber 5. So you want to load it up in your vise, and you do definitely want a spacer, because if you don't have one, that is not good for your vise, because you do have to tighten it up very, very much, way more than you would normally do for just picking. And that's definitely not good for your vise, but it's better your vise gets damaged than your hand gets damaged. So the first step to actually making it is you want to mark this lock body. Now the hacksaw will be doing the bulk of the cutting, but on here it just slides around and just scratches things up, and that's not really helpful. So you want to make a small mark with a file so that the hacksaw can get a good grip and it won't slide around. So you just line up with your pin chamber roughly. Can't really see this well. Let's angle this up. But you want to get this file aligned as well as you can to the middle of the pin chamber, which will of course give you the most even cut, but you should expect some natural deviation. And what you want to do is just start cutting a little. Literally just start filing. And the file will still move around quite a bit and slide around on here, but it's only temporary. So after you made a little mark, then you want to check your alignment quite a ways off here. Yeah, that's not so good, so in that case we just move it a bit to make it more centralized. Getting that initial mark in is what's most difficult. After that, it's mostly pretty easy. And you could see this cut. You can't see, actually. This cut is a little more centralized. Still not quite perfect, but it'll do. And expect some natural deviation. So, after you have that initial cut made, you can get your hacksaw, and you just start cutting. It's as simple as that, and you can see the best position to keep this the most stable is right behind where you're going to be cutting, which is why you want gloves. If this falls out and you're just sawing furiously, it will hit your hand. So you do want to use some protection. But now, the process is pretty simple. You just start sawing away. Except this hacksaw has been used way too much. It appears to be pretty unstable, but that's fine, I guess. Yeah, it's certainly still sliding around. It's kind of off balance, actually. It's moving at an angle, but you know, if you're using a brand new hacksaw, you won't really have to worry about this. But eventually, the further you cut in, the more stable it'll be, less you'll have to worry. And at this point, you can just start cutting really hard. Like, apply as much pressure as you can, honestly, or don't. It doesn't really matter. It's just, this is a pretty fast process, actually. And I will leave a timestamp for the cutting, when the cutting is done, because you don't have to watch this. Actually, I'll probably put it up way before I even say that, because I forgot to mention that until quite late. So we'll keep cutting here and see. You can't see nothing here. Not used to having to deal with the camera, but after just a few minutes of cutting, not even, we are pretty deep into the lock already. Not sure if we're quite hitting the core yet. Try and get this at a better camera angle, though. No, that's not really gonna work. Best to keep it at an angle like this, which is conveniently bad for the camera. And as you can see, once you get that deep cut in there, the hacksaw is just gonna, there's no space for it to move in. And you can just start going at this. Now, as you can see, this does move the vise around a lot, and the brass dust is going to clog up any vacuum vise you have real quick, so there's no point in trying, which makes it all the more important to keep it stable, which makes it all the more important to have gloves. Do as I say, not as I do. And if you press as hard as you can on the hacksaw, it will cut fast, but it'll also tire your hand quickly, so you're going to have to do a start-stop pattern a few times. But you can see, after just a few minutes of cutting, we are already hitting the Bible. And we are quite deep into the lock body, just the camera here. And my hand is a little smidge tired, but not that bad. Quickly just keep checking that realignment. Make sure it's on point. And keep sawing. Now, as I'm sure you can tell, this is also quite a loud process, which is another reason why you want to do this outside. Readjust again. Fell down a little there. Nope, hold on. Technical difficulties, it's still falling. This is not part of the plan, but, you know, whatever. These videos aren't really scripted. Alright, good enough. So we're going to just keep cutting here. Once you're starting to get close to fully done, you do want to stop every so often, check your progress. This is not an OSHA approved activity. You can see we have already cut through the top of that hinge chamber. You can't really see that too well, but that is a hole indeed. But not through the rest of the lock, not quite yet. now once you have cut through basically all of the lock and you are basically done with the cutting, you will hear that a slight change in the sound of the sawing, which is an indication to stop. That is about the sawing part of the cutaway done. Hold on, gonna get rid of brass dust on this. Alright. And let's see. That is the problem with the hacksaw. Makes the windows it makes are pretty small, but with the file it is bigger, but it also takes way longer, and you probably do not want to do that like an hour at least per chamber. So once you're done with the actual sawing, what you want to do now is deburr the lock, because as is, it's basically unusable like this. The lock, if you saw quickly enough, the lock is physically hot to touch. So the lock right now is basically unusable. It's, especially pin chamber 1 it's not going to work at all, because there's just too many, it's just too rough. The pin in pin chamber 5 is not coming out, so you have to push it out manually. There we go. Just dump this on here. And now you're gonna push it out. And sometimes if it can even be so stiff that it might even be hard to push out without any pins or anything in here. And you can see here, not the most central of cuts, but also not super bad. But right now it's basically unusable, so here's the deburring process. First, I like to take care of the core. Well, right now, it's not really going to slide in very smoothly. I said it's not really going to slide in smoothly, so you want to take your sandpaper and just lightly dust the top of it. Just real quickly, not very long. About that, really, is all you need. Then you want to deburr the inside of the core, so take your half round and sort of just slide it in here and deburr the area. You only need to deburr the area where you actually cut, of course. And then, after a bit of doing that, test it, and you can see that's very smooth now. Well, decently smooth. Next, you want to deburr these pin chambers, because the pins will not go in as now. And I can actually see some brass leftovers. Gonna have to push that out with a pick. A flashlight is helpful here, but most certainly not necessary. Yeah, get that thing out of there. It does appear to be out. Actually, we aren't quite finished with the cutting job. There is still a little bit left, so we're gonna put that back in, cut it again, just finish it off. Axle, camera up as best as I can. It is certainly a little awkward to be cutting just the core. But yeah, it's a pretty quick job. That should be all the cutting we need to do left. Check it again. Yeah, now we're done. So, back to the deburring process. I like to deburr the core first, the insides of the core. So you want to take your full round, or whatever, and kind of just stick it in the pin chamber you just worked on, and kind of just wiggle it around, hitting all sides, but especially the side you actually cut on. And what this will do is it'll let the pins slide in way more smoothly, and that is good. If you want to do this for a bit, then check every so often, and you can see that pin slides in pretty smoothly now. Yeah, alright, that's fine. And just to give a demonstration of what happens when you don't deburr it, yeah, that does not go in. So you gotta deburr that. Same process as with the core. You take your file, you stick it in here, which is why it was important to make sure it was small. It has to fit in these pin chambers. And here, there's usually not enough coverage to like do that wiggling motion with the core, so you kind of just stick it in and pull it out here. Then, once again, you check every so often. It's not quite done yet. Needs a little bit more. And you check again. Still not quite done yet. Once more. Something doesn't quite feel right here, but I'm sure it's fine. Check again, see how smooth that is. And it's almost there. The most common place it gets stuck is at the very bottom, and it is kind of hard to get to that. So just keep deburring it until it works. Not the most scientific process. It's almost there, but this is certainly longer than it will normally take. It does appear that it's just the end of the pin chamber, not the entire pin chamber that's catching it up. So maybe we want to target just the bottom a little more. Try it again. This lock is being stubborn, certainly. Give this another try. And there you go. Finally, it will slide through smoothly. And you want to try this with the driver pins as well, just to make sure they go as well. And alright, that is now deburred. You can also wash it under a sink to get rid of any remaining brass dust if you want. And that is now a fully functional 1/6 of a cutaway. So you want to load it up, add in everything. This appears to be a little more, still sticking a little more than usual, but you can always fix that later. And now I like to just test it, push it up with a pick, make sure it works. Again, it's a narrow window, but you can see it does work. Spring drops it down as normal. Take your key to your 1-pin lock, and it works. So, that is how you create a cutaway. Gone through the cutting process and then the deburring process. And then after that, you just repeat this process for the rest of the pin chambers, or however many you want to have cut away. So, I will finish this cutaway up and then stitch these two videos together with my potato editing skills, and we'll see what we have on the other side. Well, after quite a bit of sawing, this cutaway is done. Not quite my finest work. You can see some messiness here, but thanks to these cutaways, now you can see how compressed all the springs in your locks are when you grub them. There's not much more else to say about this, except if you want to widen the windows, you can use vinyl to do that. This one is pretty good for the job. It's about the right diameter to let you really see what you're doing. But otherwise, there's not much more to say about that. But we do have a little bit of extra. We have how not to make a cutaway. If you're using a file, you can see much clearer picture, but it can take 1.5 upwards of 2 hours per chamber of painful filing. And you also want to pay attention, because if you get careless, your lock might be able to do that. You do not want your lock to do that unless you do it for all the pin chambers and call it some crazy key change system. And we also have, again, you want to pay attention to what you're doing because, well, this is not exactly how locks are usually broken, but that happened. If anybody needs some drill bit fodder, let me know. Yeah, I don't have much else to say. I should probably do something with all of these, like do a giveaway for them or something. I sure don't need them. But anyway, thank you for watching.